Fuck them Cowboys! Yeah! Never lose sight of the magic of this football team. Yeah! Here we go!
I'm all in.
Cowboys fans, it's your host Slater here. If you bleed silver and blue and you want honest talk, no filters, you're in the right place. Leave a comment, like, subscribe, and enjoy the video.
That formulates a couple interesting questions. I'll do the first one, I'll do the second one. So the first one is, if you look at the roster for the Seahawks, we've got a good quarterback. We've got a Super Bowl MVP running back. We've got a veteran wide receiver in Cooper Kupp. We've got a young and up-and-coming superstar in Jackson Smith. We've got, on defense, we've got a conglomerate of talent, led by DeMarcus Lawrence and a pretty solid secondary. And and then they pick up, Shaheed mid-season, and that worked out well. So you've got power at, on each side of the ball, special teams, defense, offense. And when you compare that, because this is a Cowboys-based show, when you compare that to the Cowboys, I think what we have that they have, ours in some cases is a little bit better. I think we got a little bit better of a quarterback. I think we've got a comparable running back. I think we have a better wide receiver duo and trio if you include Jake Ferguson. And then when you look at us defensively, where we are struggling is we don't have that DeMarcus Lawrence presence. And, we have some good pieces that would work well with one if we had one similar with what he brings to the table. And then we're lacking that secondary because I think we have our special teams piece, right? I mean, do you agree with that? Is that kind of what we're looking at, is we just need a comparable defense to what the Seattle Seahawks put out on the field in the Super Bowl tonight? Or are we further off than that when you look at all the pieces that I just named?
Yeah, so had this topic cooked up, right? Like, what can the Cowboys take away from the Super Bowl, right? What can we learn from the Super Bowl winning team tonight? And I kind of, with a little bit of help of some Chat GPT here, right? I kind of put together like a timeline of what Seattle did to get to this moment, right? And January 2025, they're entering year 2 with their head coach, right? Obviously, they wanted to be a defensive first identity, which you saw all year, all in the playoffs and even tonight.
Sure. Yeah.
What some of the major turning points were during their run was Geno Smith was traded. So what does that do? That clears your cap and officially ends the previous era, right? They bring in Sam Darnold on that prove-it 3-year deal. And then, like you said, they signed, DeMarcus Lawrence, right? And they bring in some, veteran pass rusher to kind of help out with the locker room leadership, kind of be an anchor for that. Here's the key note for this. The Seahawks spend aggressively $200 million total, signaling a win-now mode. And we've kind of seen this team over the years, right? We've seen it with the Rams back in 2021. We saw it with, a couple other teams in the past. But outside the Chiefs,
49ers attempted it.
Yeah, the Niners attempted it with McCaffrey. Like, outside of the Chiefs, if you want to be in the game or be in the dance, outside of maybe like how the Patriots made it, which is like, you kind of lucked into playing some teams without their starting quarterback in AFC Championship. In the divisional round, you got playing against a quarterback who can't throw a pass to save his life. He wants to throw interceptions the whole time. Like, you can be in this game very easily, right? And to bring it back to your point, Dallas has the offense. We bring back George Pickens. We sign Javonte Williams. We get some maybe offensive line depth to kind of help out there. We're there offensively. Defensively, I think like this line right here, I got highlight on my screen where it says Seahawks spend aggressively $200 million total, signaling a win now mode is what Dallas needs to do. We know, we've seen this the tweets, the stats, whoever wants to talk about it. Dallas can create over $100 million in cap this offseason if they choose to. Will they choose to and signal the win now mode that I'm talking about here? Because if not, then what's the point? What's the point of getting hyped up? What's the point of being like, we're there offensively? How do we get there defensively? And what's the point of having this conversation with us, the viewers, and everything like that? What's the whole point? If Jerry Jones is not going to sit down and fully commit to it. Do you feel the same about that? And do you think I'm on the right page?
No, 100%. That's why I posed that question, is because I look at the Seahawks and I'm like, man, we're actually pretty comparable to that team.
Yeah.
and they just easily won the Super Bowl. Their path to get there wasn't easy. I mean, they played a Rams team that is very, very good, maybe even a little better offensively at least. And then, they went against what I considered to be a paper tiger and, the New England Patriots, who were just rolling off of, an excellent coaching staff and very, very strong discipline and preparation. And they made it look pretty easy. I mean, New England had no chance from the get-go, it seemed like. But it's all going to be on what we do defensively. We've got a strong defensive line. We have to get a pass rusher, a significant pass rush threat. That's essential. That's step one, right? I know everybody wants, secondary and cornerbacks and safeties and all that good stuff, but you saw what that 4-man line did to New England tonight. And every now and then when they knew they were going to try to take a shot, they just threw in, a cornerback blitz or, a twist or something, and it shook Drake May up because he had no rhythm. He was not comfortable. And when he needed to drop back and take a pass, he didn't have the comfort he was accustomed to all season long because his clock had been sped up. He's been getting hit. He's already been stripped once, So I think at this level, any chance we're going to have is going to come through the defensive line of getting our defense right. And I don't even need it to be to that level, really. Our offense is so good that if we can just get to where we can hold a team under 25, 26 points a game, I think we can get there by the time, we get to the 10th game, 11th game of the season. So I think you're on the right track with that. Before you finish up, let me ask you my second question.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold was drafted to the Jets, right? If I'm not mistaken. Okay. So at this point where he's gone from several teams now and has only gotten better and has now been in 2 different programs and carried teams into the playoffs, is he more than just a bus driver or a game manager in your mind now? How do you see him?
I think after, I before tonight I really saw it, but I think after these 2 seasons kind of with Seattle and the Minnesota, I think he's more than just a bus driver. I think he's more than a game manager. I think people signed him to be a game manager, but I think he's way more than that. I think he's capable of being more than that. And it's really just because sometimes when he's slinging it, man, he's making throws that, let's say even
making, right.
Yeah, like Dak Prescott be making those throws. The best
these
with
aren't
the league.
checkdowns, right.
So, and most people get game manager or bus driver from, years and years of samples. And that's what he was before Minnesota.
Right.
He still maybe got a couple more years to kind of prove that he's better than that. But, looking at his draft profile from a long time ago, kind of reading what they talked about, he was always meant to be a project quarterback. He came into the league at like 20 years old, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. He was really young coming into the league. And it was like one of those things where it's like, this guy is not meant to step in day one and win you games, but he has the talent to one day, if you develop him right, give him time, give him under the right system, to like unleash on teams. And I think that's what we're seeing now. I think when you go from what they called, which I believe in too, the 2 worst franchises at the time, which were the Jets and then Carolina. And they did a little documentary of it earlier, kind of saying like, Sam Darnold made the sacrifice of going to be a backup for San Fran and learn under, Shanahan, and really understanding how to be a good offensive minded quarterback, how to really understand the game. I think that's where everything changed for him. And then, you go to Kevin O'Connell. But I think this sense. Yeah, I think the Seattle Seahawks here really proved that he's more than a game manager, because it's not like his head coach was an offensive-minded guy, right? Everyone thought that Minnesota was letting him go because he was a result of the system. But this year he's kind of like proven, because look at Minnesota.
Right.
He's proven that he was giving the results for the system. I may saying that back.
No, I think I get what you're saying. Like you said, he's drafted in 2018 out of USC, right? He's so he just won the Super Bowl and he's 28 years old.
Yeah, still young, way young.
So, I mean, you look at that and you're like, okay, so you've reached the peak, you've reached the top of the mountain as far as a quarterback goes, and you're 28 years old, and you're I mean, you're doing it consistently, right? This is multiple years now where he's done this, and now he's won a Super Bowl, and he's only 28 years old. So if you give this guy, say 6 more years, how many more times can he, get to this point? How many more Super Bowls can he potentially win? And I agree with you. Going the route that he went under the tutelage that he was able to get with the coaches he worked with may have been the key that gave him the right mental preparation and good habits that it requires to be, a future elite quarterback. Because the way I look at him after watching that game tonight, man, some of those throws were tough throws for any quarterback. And those weren't, check down, safe tight end route, safe sideline route, check down, scramble 3 yards for the first down. It wasn't that kind of stuff. I mean, he was really throwing nice passes into some pretty tough windows. So it just shows that he has that skill, one, and two, he has what it takes mentally to not be afraid of that moment and to do what it takes when he needs to do it when the team's on your back, because you are playing a very good team or good coached team that knows how to do its job, right? So it's going to take someone playing better than what that would normally allow for. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I don't know much about him. Obviously, just what I've seen watching the game, but I don't know what his contract is there. But I doubt he's going anywhere at this point.
He's a 3-year, like $100 million deal. It's kind of like one of those, like, he had a good season, but still a prove it deal.
Yeah. So I wonder how much their, build a Super Bowl team is going to hurt them next year cap wise. And if this is going to be a situation where they may be kind of like the Rams, where, they built the team, they got to the top, and then the next year, they had to pay the price. But because the core of the team was so strong and the leadership of the quarterback was so solid, they were able to develop the next man up well enough to be competitive again immediately, even with the financial slump, right? So that'll be very interesting to watch if that even happens.
I think that's kind of the moral of the story for me is, like, over the years, Jerry, Steven, whoever has always been like, well, we have to be smart with the cap, and we have to, find ways to, make sure that we're financially always stable, or if, like, make sure we have our draft picks so then we can still be in the news or whatever, well, whatever excuse it may be. But look at the Rams. They went all in 2021, and they're still competitive to this day. I mean, I feel like the Rams are fighting every year to be in the playoffs, or if not in the playoffs, in the NFC Championship game, right? Because of what you just said. I think Seattle's going to fall right under that same category. I think that core, because they've drafted so well on top of the free agents, you may see free agents kind of sprinkle away, but
sure,
this core is going to be there, and they're going to be good next year too. But I think that's kind of the moral of the story here is, if you go all in and you really execute right on going all in, why are you trying to get a dynasty? Let's just go get one. I'm sure running it back won't be as hard as most teams think it, or they think it will be. So,
right. No, 100%. I agree with that. And it's like nothing else. When you're at the top of the mountain, everybody wants to play for you, right? And things kind of work in your favor because you have that shine, right? So you look at the Eagles, they had some of that going on. They were the hot thing, and everything just seemed to work out for them with their players and who they got and who joined the team and the free agents they were able to pick up because they were that new shiny toy. And that's what it takes sometimes to differentiate yourself from the other 31 teams in the league, is you've got to have something that you've achieved recently that makes you a desirable commodity. And if that's what it takes for Dallas to do that, then that's what they should do. They should do whatever it takes, sell out whatever it is they need to sell out, because this is as close to almost a perfect team as I've seen Dallas in a while. I know that's probably a hot take considering the defense was so bad, but everything else on the team works. And sometimes the defense even worked a little bit.
Yeah.
But if it even worked relatively good, you can go a long way with that. But definitely going to be interesting to see how they handle free agency and what they do with the draft capital that they have, the first round picks, and the fact that they can make a lot of moves with the money that's available to them in the cap by, doing what you do contractually with the personnel you have on staff.
Yeah. And to kind of put this all into like a big picture, here's what I wrote in like my summary of the notes of looking at the Seahawks timeline, right?
Sure.
They chose conviction over comfort. And what I mean
Right.
by this is they went for guys that they believed in. They went for guys that they felt were going to be the right fit, culture-wise, scheme-wise, like, right, instead of, maybe and being aggressive with the cap, right? Instead of being like, well, we just signed kind of Darnold. We need to see it. We need to play it out for a year and see how good he really is before we go all in. They said, we're bringing you in, Darnold, because we believe in you. Externally, there may not be a lot of belief, right? But internally, we think you're the guy. We think you can do it. They bring in DeMarcus Lawrence, veteran key piece. They bring in probably a couple other guys from there because they believe in it. They didn't say, oh, let's test the waters for a year, see how good Darnold really is, then maybe we'll go all in. It's like Rashid Shaheed, right? Midway through the year. Did they really need him? Maybe not. But they believe that was a guy that could get him over the top. And guess what? He returns a kickoff for you in the playoff game. And tonight he almost broke one for a long touchdown, right?
Yeah.
So second
he's
bullet
a good
point,
little utility player for them. Yeah, he proved worth whatever they did to get him,
Yeah, and the second bullet point I have is spending early. Looking at the timeline of how they built this team during this offseason is that they went out early and got people. They didn't wait. They didn't go get the leftovers. They didn't go get the Kenneth Murrays of the world. They didn't go get, the Jack Sanborns of the world. They went out and got their guys early. As soon as the market hits, Darnold signed. As soon as the market hits, DeMarcus Lawrence is signed. They're not waiting. They want to go get who they believe in, conviction over comfort, right? And then the third bullet point I have is trusting the coaching fit over star power, which is a question I'm actually going to kick over to you because this is interesting. Would you rather have Dallas be aggressive in free agency for guys that are a better coaching fit, scheme fit, or are you looking for the Max Crosbys of the world who are maybe high star power? How do you feel about that?
Great question. Not knowing what is a scheme fit now. Offensively, I can answer that question because I've seen what Shoddy's about and I've seen what he brings, right? Defensively, that's an interesting question because I'm one eye blind on that, right?
Yeah.
I don't know what the scheme fit would be, but I know what they intend and I know what they're looking for in the coaches. So if you look at what a player would benefit from that kind of a coach, you can kind of see what kind of player they would want. They'd want a team guy, who's talented, who is good at taking in instruction and changing his habits and changing the way he approaches the game and being disciplined.
Yep.
So if you want an elite teaching coach, you want an elite learning player, right? So I think those are the kind of guys they're going to go after, which, to answer your question, may end up being guys that aren't the shiniest penny in the bundle. You know what I mean? It may be a guy that is a little duller, but under the right tutelage could shine up pretty nice. So that could be something we see. It may be a sneaky good pick that we all kind of think like, what? Who's this guy? Or he didn't do that well there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of characters they go after, if that proves my theory correct or not. But that very well could be the case. They may stray away from a guy like Max Crosby because he already knows he's very good, and that could either be a pro or a con. So, but as a professional player and a professional coach, you should be able to work with anybody. But if they're trying to build this culture first, that may be more important than the other aspect of it, right?
Yeah. And I kind of did the same thing for New England, but when you look at how their free agency went, like you just talked about, right? Like, I mean, yeah, they got some stars on this list, but most of it's like, it seems like they're signing guys that were more of a scheme fit, right? Milton Williams, that D tackle to boost interior defensive pressure, which we know Mike Vrabel's a big, probably defensive. I make sure we stop the run. And you saw it for the most part, not really tonight, but for the most part. Like Carlton Davis III, like really? You know, you're kind of looking at that. You know, Harold Landry III, again helps with quarterback pressure, stuff like that. You know, Stephon Diggs, right? You know, a guy that kind of carries a lot of baggage with him, high ego, but again, they saw this as maybe potentially a really good scheme fit because they had a second-year quarterback who really kind of need a number one weapon.
Right.
And then getting a guy like Morgan Moses, you know, to kind of help out on the offensive line. But those are there are scenarios throughout the league where you can point out and say that one, you can be aggressive, choose conviction over comfort. And then the third thing being, you know, finding maybe better scheme fits to build your depth around and maybe going to get a star player or two to kind of overall bolster your team, right? I do think on the Dallas defense, we have the star power there. I think we're really more looking for scheme fits, right? Like you got Ezraku, Quentin Williams, Osa, Kenny Clark. I feel like those are star power guys. Overshown.
Yeah, sure.
I feel star power in that. Deron Bland, star power. So now it's like, how do we get maybe like another safety that maybe brings some star power and then really finding scheme fits. So then the system and the playbook and everything else runs smooth and fluid.